Welcome to the Mercy Music Podcast. We are here today with Paul Carlon and Kevin Farrell. Thank you guys so much for doing this today.
Thank you.
We get lunch a lot. We hang out. We have fun, around talking with each other. And that was one of the original ideas for this podcast, like the conversations that the three of us have. Yeah. It's just fun. And I was like, maybe that would be entertaining to some of our listeners.
So you ordered lunch
students.
Already, right?
Yeah, lunch is coming. Yeah, it's coming. But what I like to do is kind of start, Paul, with kind of your musical journey, and we'll come up to what we're doing now. But, what are some of your first musical, moments in your life?
Okay. Yeah. I talk about this a lot because when I started playing music, I was in fourth grade and I played the cello.
Okay.
And the reason I played the cello was because I wanted to play saxophone, but those instruments weren't offered in the fourth grade. And my siblings played string instruments. So my sister played cello, one of my brothers played violin. So I was like, okay, And, I sawed away and did my best. But, the hand position was really difficult. At least it was for me when I was 8. And maybe it would have continued to be. And I still had the saxophone in my head. And the reason was because I heard the sound somewhere on the radio. And the sound of the instruments is what captured me.
Do you remember what you heard or just
the
sound?
I don't actually. It might have been more than one thing. I just remember that sound, being fascinated by it. And then...
Was it jazz? Was it big band? Or
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't think so. I think it was more probably pop radio.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. And then the next year in the fifth grade, they offered those instruments. So, by that point, I was like, maybe I want to play the trumpet, But I circled back around with the sax, and honestly, never looked back. Like I talk about this a lot with my students, and if I do like a master class, excuse me, I still remember what it felt like to sit in my parents' living room in the fifth grade. The first day I had like that rental alto saxophone. I remember what that felt like because to me it was the promise of something else. And there was a mystery to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And, couldn't really even play,
So you were already seeing it as like years down the road as a thing?
I don't know if I saw it. I don't know if I saw it years down the road. It just was this really cool thing. And I was like, wow, this is something.
Yeah.
This is really like, I don't know what it is, but that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
When I say the promise, I don't even mean in terms of success or career. I just mean like the sound and like, wow, maybe I could do this.
Do you think because it was different than the strings from your siblings, it was uniquely yours maybe? Was that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it was also because I had heard that sound,
Yeah.
And I also think back, like I rode the school bus. I grew up in a rural area, very rural. And our house was basically the last or second to last on the run. So it would take 45 minutes to get home from the school. And it's like a 7-minute drive. You know what I mean? So at that time, I'm talking about the mid to late 70s, the stuff on the school bus, on the radio, like I remember hearing, "Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself" by Sly and the Family Stone. And it stuck in my head. There was a lot at that time, especially the late 70s, a lot of Blondie too, like, Heart of Glass and that kind of stuff. But like, there's certain songs I just remember because later on when I really got into like Sly, I was like, oh, I know this, from having heard it. I remember hearing Fire on the Bayou. I don't know where. I don't think it was on the school bus, maybe by the Meters. Which is a classic tune,
I have memories of music on the school bus too, weirdly.
It's amazing that you have those things, in your memory.
Yeah.
Like,
do you have any of that, Kev?
I mean, a little bit. I didn't ride the bus. I was mostly like getting to school another way.
Yeah. There you go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Definitely remember riding with my dad.
Yeah. Even in the car.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh. So you start studying that.
Yeah.
And with the cello though, you were already learning sheet music from that, or
I learned some. Yeah, I mean, I was learning. We were, you start to.
And
learn
this is in
notes.
middle school or elementary school.
Yeah. Middle school it was fifth grade when I started and played in the middle school band, and all that.
With cello or both?
No, but once I got saxophone, the cello was done. Like I never picked it up again.
Yeah. Kevin brought his cello today, so you can let's play it.
Well, he can play. Actually,
that's true.
I don't know what I was doing on it, but
and so you're playing in the school bands, and what kind of stuff are you playing? Like, is it like
it was symphonic music, and what's called there's band music, which is for that context, and And then when I got into 8th grade, in that school district at that time, 8th grade was part of the high school.
Okay.
Which is not, usually it's 9th.
Right.
But what that meant for me is I got a new teacher. And the new teacher was Joe Procopio. And he was a phenomenal saxophone player and just musician in general. Played piano and guitar and, sang and all this stuff. But he was a total jazz head. And he also was a big fan of a saxophone player named Earl Bostic. Earl Bostic is one of those players who, like Lou Donaldson, a legendary alto saxophonist who just passed recently. He said Earl Bostic was the greatest saxophone player I ever heard. And he, Lou Donaldson played with Charlie Parker, and he knew Coltrane, and he said he knew more about the sax than anyone. So my teacher at the time, Joe, he had followed Earl Bostic around on the road to learn, stuff from him. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make about my teacher was that he was hugely inspirational for me.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he's my musical daddy.
Yeah.
Without him, I wouldn't be playing.
Right.
And he actually, he passed a few years ago during COVID. He was, he had some medical conditions and stuff, but he passed fairly recently. But, he told me, so the first day that I went in, this is a good teacher, what I mean? This is a sign. Like the first day I went into the lesson, he told me, you could be the best saxophone player that ever came out of this school. And I came out of there and I was walking 10 feet. I felt 10 feet high walking down the hallway. Now, I think he probably said that to every student.
Yeah.
And that's what was awesome about him,
Yeah.
I just happen to believe it, or it puffed me up a little, like, oh wow, I could really do this,
Yeah.
So
the high school music teachers, man, right? It's like I have some great memories of some too. I mean, there were such pivotal moments in your forming a musical career, right?
Yeah.
And
hopefully
they can. I mean, I know people that stop playing music because of their high school music teachers,
one way or the
right?
other,
Yeah,
positive
it's
or
like,
negative,
because it's like, oh, they made me feel a certain way about this, but the fact that you were reinforced, I guess, is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And did you keep up with him like post high school? That's cool.
Oh yeah,
that's cool.
Oh yeah, I did. Every so often I would call him up, and so we called him Chief. That was his nickname. All of us called him Chief. Hey Chief, blah 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 blah. So I'd call him, hey Chief, still doing it.
Yeah.
And he still would have, amazingly nice things to say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I listened to that record you sent me.
Awesome. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're doing high school. But did he show you jazz? Was that like a gateway to jazz or no?
Yeah.
Part of it?
In a lot of ways, he was. I think I was starting to listen to it because my mother, when I was in the 8th or 9th grade, went into him, the teacher, and said, hey, he really seems interested in this. I want to buy him a couple of records. We're talking vinyl.
Yeah.
What should I get? And he gave her like 3 names: Eddie Harris, Charlie Parker, and John Coltrane. And she went and bought Blue Train, which is a classic record by John Coltrane, a Charlie Parker and Miles Davis record. Like I still have them.
Yeah.
And an Eddie Harris kind of like best of record. And man, that stuff sounded amazing to me.
Yeah.
And some of it I was like, wow, weird, weird sounds, like, just unfamiliar, like, wow, what is this, But some of it I really identified with right away, the sound and what they were expressing, the emotion, And then I started, I'm sure it was probably Chief telling me to do this, I started learning solos by ear.
Okay.
Pretty young, like 13, maybe 14. And I remember I remember the solos. I mean, I could probably play some of them today, because at that age, your memory is so strong. But one of them was Phil Woods, another, legendary saxophone player. And it was a song called, now I'm going to forget the name of it, but I can still hear it in my head. But later, years later, I worked with Phil Woods.
Yeah.
And I told him,
That's
said,
amazing.
Yeah. And it was really cool. It was a full circle moment.
Yeah. I just had one of those kind of things happen to me like 25 years ago. My grandma bought me this CD, and then I just worked with the dude the other day, and it's just like it's so weird. It's just so wild how that happens in your career in music.
Yeah,
because it's so much smaller once you're in it. I feel like it's not that insane once you're in the, but it feels like this mountain
when you start. Right, it feels so far away.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're doing that. Anything else like high school world that
Yeah,
to touch
so
on? And
if
you're
that-
upstate New York, but just for
Yeah.
people that don't know, it's like where
We call it Central New York. But
I don't know. Anything above us is upstate.
exactly.
I don't know.
That's the difference, right? So outside of Syracuse.
Okay.
Outside of Syracuse, yeah.
For our friend AJ, actually, where does upstate New York start? You're in the city. Where does upstate New York start to you?
Westchester.
Westchester. That's the line.
Or, I think for New Yorkers, right?
Right.
Up Westchester's almost upstate, but really it's probably everything beyond
Yeah.
Westchester. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I lived in Inwood for 5 years, which is Upper Manhattan.
Right.
And I had a friend who used to joke, said, "You live in upstate Manhattan."
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's the last thing.
What about you, Kevin? You're from California originally. Where does upstate start for you?
I mean, I think upstate lays on a continuum.
Yeah, I love that. Nice.
Safe. Too safe.
Nice. No. See, that's
so,
Kevin.
so real.
That's
though.
Kevin right there. I love
It's relative.
that. Yeah.
So you're up somewhere in the state of New York,
In the wilds.
and then did you, after high school, talk to me about that process? Did you know you wanted to go to like a college, university, or what was that journey?
Well, in the context that I grew up in, the time and place, you were expected to go to college.
Okay.
I think by sort of just, if you had the opportunity, you were expected to go. Also, my father never really went to college. He tried a couple times, but my father was, I've talked to you guys about this. He had a tough upbringing in Syracuse during the Great Depression, and he went in the military very young. He wasn't a career military person, but he sort of got recalled. And in any case, I bring that up because for him, education really was the key, as it was for so many folks. And I think still is, hopefully, it's valued like that was the way for him out, way out, So, I mean, he never really said as much. He didn't expect, it's kind of amazing that considering his background and the way he valued education, he didn't expect his children to be doctors, lawyers, sort of the obvious things you would think of, But I don't know if he would have been cool with me not having some kind of degree.
Right.
He wasn't heavy-handed about it. But when I think about it now, it's like, yeah, he wouldn't. There's no way any of us, first of all, we're going to drop out of high school. Nah.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's some of that unspoken, just like understanding.
This is what
maybe,
you do,
yeah, like
right? This is what you do, right? So yeah, but I was really leaning towards music. Like I hadn't really figured out this is really the thing. And part of the reason, and I don't mean to diss Chief Joe Procopio, but he told me don't do it like as for a living.
That's interesting.
Because he said do something else so that you can keep it pure. Which I totally understand now. Like I get why. The struggle and all that. But
that's an interesting thing, though.
I had internalized that to a certain degree. I listened to him. And the other thing was that I was sort of, I was a good student in terms of schoolwork.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of, and I was also, I just was like, I did a lot of things. I was an athlete. I was an all-star athlete in high school anyway. In that school district, soccer.
Okay.
Soccer.
So don't skip over this.
Well,
we actually have a soccer ball. We'd like to
right. Bust it out. And I got a National Merit Scholarship.
Okay.
Which was tied to, you had to like tell them, well, where are you going to go? And then they would figure out. And some of it was need-based and, to the University of Rochester. So I started there. And I think maybe in the back of my head, I was thinking, maybe I could go to Eastman. But I was sort of insecure about like, could I even get into a music school?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come from like a hotbed of, that was funneling people into, amazing music schools. And so I spent, a year there, and I was like, what am I doing here? And I spent a lot of time practicing when I was there. I played in a funk band on campus.
Okay.
And,
so you're not studying music there, like officially?
Not officially, no.
But on your own, it sounds
on my
like.
own,
But not
I was
in
playing
class.
in the campus jazz ensemble.
So you're skipping classes like some of our students now?
No, no. I didn't really skip a lot. I was struggling definitely with I remember... was it? Yeah, University of Rochester. Because I was trying to figure out, what I was going to do, and so I took calculus and just crash and burn, which is funny because musicians are supposed to be good at math, but I always had trouble with the sine wave thing, and as as it gets closer to you have to assume that it's true, and I was like, well, that just sounds like faith to me, I need to. Anyway, it just wasn't my bag, but And then I was like, well, I don't really want to go back. And they also cut some of my scholarship because I'm the youngest of four siblings, and one of my older siblings had graduated from college. So like, you know how they do the math on that, like, and I was like, well, I didn't love it anyway. So I then I got a job. I went back home and lived at home with my parents for another, whatever it was, 7 or 8 months. And I worked in Syracuse at a scene shop. At Syracuse Stage, which is a regional theater.
Okay.
You know, good one. And I was an apprentice scenery carpenter.
Whoa.
Building stage, you know, all this stuff. It was really cool. It was an awesome job. The people I worked with were so cool.
Yeah.
It's the best job I ever had outside of music.
Right.
Like by far. Made zero. You know, I think I was making $3.85, which was the minimum wage in 1986, 87.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know, after doing that for a while, I was like, okay, now I understand why I need a degree.
Right.
I need to get my butt back in college. And I transferred to Cornell University, which I had not gotten into out of high school. I'd applied. My sister was there. My sister Meg was really smart. And I mean this in various ways. Do you guys know that there's a state school at Cornell that you pay SUNY tuition?
No.
Never heard of that.
No.
It's the agriculture school, which is a big part of, you know, the school that was endowed like a long time ago.
Okay.
And it was sort of, somehow it's connected, you know, as a state school. And my sister, and so some of the science programs are part of that school, including entomology, bug science. So that's what my sister got a degree in. So she was already there. I would go visit her, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know, there's a cool scene. The scene at sort of the University of Rochester, it just felt dead. It was cold.
Okay.
I don't mean physically cold. It just felt cold. Yeah. Like, and so anyway, I transferred, and like within a year, I was like, all right, now I'm going to drop out because now I know it's going to be music.
Oh, okay. So you weren't doing music there either?
Well, I did. I started doing it there. So not long after I transferred, John LaBarba, who's a quite well-known jazz composer and arranger and trumpet player, he took over running the ensembles. And I also there was a really good music scene in Ithaca, a very, very active music scene. So I had met a group of friends who were like gigging and, you know, playing in funk bands and different kinds of groups. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I kind of found my little place there. Yeah. And I also started working in a big band led by a guy named Joe Salzano, who still is up there, another one of my mentors. And I was just thinking about him yesterday. I was trying to remember how much older he is than I am. So I would have been 20. And he was, I think, in his early 30s. So, you know, between 12, 15 years. But Joe had grown up in Rochester and was also a tremendous saxophone player. And he had a big band, the Joe Salzano big band, and we all worked in it. And like, he would do dances at Cornell. He would do wedding gigs. He would do like the Corning Glass Museum, you know, whatever gigs were available for a big band in the late 80s. And he had a regular gig too for a while in Ithaca. But it was great because a lot of my peers were in the band, my friends, and he was just a great teacher. He was kind of old school. He would give you a knock or two, like not literally, but if he felt you needed it.
Yeah.
But, you know, done with love. I mean,
yeah.
It wasn't just to shame you. So I got quite busy.
Yeah.
Like I was actually gigging a lot by the time I left. But in the middle of that, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna bail out of here. And I had a couple of friends. Joe was one of them, and this other guy, Armin Bodwin, who was a bass player from Richmond, Virginia, who had worked with Mary Lou Williams. Legendary figure in jazz, piano player, composer, and was just, he would tell these stories about her, and you know, it's like she had a huge impact on his life. And both of these guys told me when I was like, I'm thinking of, you know, quitting school, they were like, don't be an idiot.
Really?
Yeah. Just, you're this far in. Just get a degree. Get it in whatever. Just get a degree because you're going to need it later on.
Yeah.
You know, and fortunately, I had enough sense to listen to him. You know, I didn't always have a lot of sense about some things at that point in my life, and so I finished. But you know, my grades sort of did this sort of like not a dive, but just there's a little decline there. You know, but I finished, got the degree as soon as I graduated.
And what's that degree though?
English literature.
Right. I didn't think it was music yet. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So any of my students at Mercy that, you know, my music history students know how hard I am about writing well.
Yeah.
It's a basic requirement to read and write in English.
Yeah.
And I always love literature, and I love, for a minute, actually, this is kind of a key part of my story. When I was at Cornell, I was actually, before I sort of had made that realization, I was thinking maybe I'll be a writer.
Mm-hmm. I can see that, yeah.
But it's really funny. The thing that changed my mind when I realized, when I got to Cornell and I started in the English program, and I was like, oh, it's all about rewriting. Drag, because I thought it was this, this sort of romantic inspiration and moment, and like, oh, you're caught up in the, which, right, it is when you're in the flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, but the thing I loved about jazz in particular was the fact that you couldn't change it.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you play live, it goes out in the air, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You get a chance to do the best you can in that moment. And then it's gone.
Yeah.
And, you forget about it the next day, or you use it to motivate you if you feel like you didn't play well.
Sure.
And that totally got me.
Yeah.
So something in me, whether it was, I don't know, it was an appetite for risk, or it's emotional risk to be on the stage, right? To be putting yourself out there and hopefully playing something that will connect with people.
Yeah.
You're taking a big risk. But I don't know, that appealed to me at that point in my life. And the other key moment I remember, I was taking this class on the history of the Holocaust at Cornell with this phenomenal professor. They had a few of those. I was interested in history, and he wasn't even talking about music.
Mm.
It had nothing to do with me and my little world of whatever I was trying to do. But he said, he just kind of was making a point, and he said, at some points in life, some doors close, and then you can't open those doors again. And I was like, ding, I just thought, if I don't do this, I'm going to be miserable in my life, and if I don't do it right now, that door may close.
Yeah.
And so in the summers while I was at Cornell, one of my brothers was in college at Boston University, and essentially because of just some issues about when I was growing up, I had left. I left home. I left my parents' house at 17. I graduated from high school. I was 17. The day after I graduated from high school, I was gone.
Mm.
And it was part of the reason was because my older brother Dave was already in college. He said, "Come to Boston," and he got me a job. So I painted houses that summer. The summer after high school, I painted houses 50 hours a week, $10 an hour in 1986, which was really good money. Cash. It was all cash. Loved it, because and I had an apartment.
Yeah.
Like I had roommates, but I almost went to college early, in a sense. Or went to life college early. But what was awesome about that, and I wasn't doing a lot of music that summer, but it gave me the confidence, oh, wow, I could actually live on my own.
Right.
Shoot, I can get a job. I actually have the skill now. I learned how to paint. We worked hard on that crew. And, I probably paid my rent in a week.
Right.
At that point in time, you could still do that. You know what I mean? You can't really do it anymore. But so a couple of years later, when I was at Cornell, I went back to Boston and I asked John LaBarba, the ensemble director at Cornell, hey, can you recommend a teacher in Boston?
Mm-hmm.
And so he recommended a couple of people, and I ended up studying with George Garzone, who's really a legendary tenor saxophone player in the world of jazz. Amazing player, incredible ability, motivation, and ears. Amazing ears. And so that was kind of the start of really seriously studying jazz improvisation, outside of what I've been doing on my own, which was learning a lot of solos, which, by the way, is a great way to do it. I think we all, that's how we really learn, to me. That's how we really
Are you writing anything yourself yet at that point?
I started to.
You started to.
I had started to at Cornell, writing little things, here and there. And while I was at Cornell, I also played in a couple other bands. I had a band, jazz bands.
Oh, you did? Well, okay.
Yeah, so we had a few, besides the big band, we would put together quartet or quintet or something and play at Collegetown Bagels was this place. And a couple other places. There was a place called The Haunt, which would have
Sounds very familiar.
They'd have Albert King, these blues legends come through, or earlier in his career, not when I was there, they had, Stevie Ray Vaughan and people that were on the way up or maybe on the way down or somewhere in between, but touring bands.
Yeah.
Really cool venue. So I would go there a lot just to hear and play there, every once in a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then like I said, I had this group of friends at Cornell, and we were all jazz nerds, and we were really into it and trying to figure it out. So once I graduated in 1991, I graduated in January. Literally, I moved right to New York City, and I was in the I applied and auditioned and got into the program, grad program at Manhattan School of Music, and started there, and I lasted one semester there because I describe myself as a mixture of schooled and street.
Yeah.
I had academic, certain amount of like studying in an academic environment. But the reason I moved to New York was not to be in a grad program in a music school. And I hadn't really learned music in a music school up to that point, even though I'd played in some ensembles. And I also took some classes at Ithaca College while I was at Cornell, courses on improvisation, because they had a much stronger music program there and really good players. So I had some of that. But when I got to New York, I really just wanted to hang out at the jam sessions.
Sure.
And learn the way that I had been reading about and hearing about the jazz tradition. I didn't grow up in that. I didn't come out of like, some, like you see the Marsalis family, from New Orleans, they have this deep background in music. Sure. And there's lots of other examples one could name. That wasn't me. I grew up in the middle of like cornfields and dairy farms and what was drawn to the music. So when I got to New York, I lasted a semester, and I was like, and it was very expensive too. And I was like, I don't know if I could see doing this whole thing. And I was, I was going to do what I was going to do. Like, that was one thing. I guess it was something, that was a positive characteristic. And when you look back, it's like, oh, maybe not so much in some ways, but. So I just did a couple of different jobs, and I worked for the New York City Department of Transportation for a little while, just a desk job. I did some temp work, and then I just started hanging out. And it took me a while, like probably almost a year, to get up the gumption to go to the really hardcore sessions.
Okay.
Like I used to go to the old Village Gate. I'd go to the Sunday afternoon in some of the sessions, but like Smalls, which I mentioned, was different. That was like. You go there, you're going to get your head cut for sure.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to do that. I talk about this in my classes here sometimes. Like that was a very formative period for me because I literally made myself go. Like I didn't want to be up there. I didn't want to be embarrassed. I didn't want to sound bad, Well,
I want to like live through that for a second if you'll indulge me. So your first couple months in New York City. All right. You're what, 20-something years old? 22 years old. 22, yeah. It's pretty young, right? Yeah. You have your sax. You're bringing it to the gig, and like you're shaking. I can't imagine. You're nervous. Come on, right? I mean, you're nervous, right? Definitely. And so, what happens there? Do they like? Because I more of a punk rock background, which is just very different.
Right. Different context.
Like, so what? You're like waiting for them to like come on up, or like, well, how do you like? Yeah. How do you make it known that you're like, I'm ready to hang, like I'm ready to do this?
So some of the jam sessions would be run by someone where they actually have a list. Yeah. And you can just go up and say, and they'll announce.
So not if you want like an open mic kind of thing, like where you're signing up. Okay.
Just maybe, specific.
So it's formal. You have
specific to that genre.
Yeah.
But most of them weren't. And most of the cool ones weren't. Meaning the ones where you're really going to learn something and hear like, wow, be blown away. And so it was a process sometimes of just either I already knew someone that was playing in the band, or they would have a house band, or.
But how do you even meet them? You're going and just hanging out, grabbing a drink, kind of a situation.
So some of my friends from Ithaca had moved down before me, like say either a year or a semester before, and a lot of them were going to the new school, which at that time was on Fifth Avenue. The music school was on Fifth Avenue, and. They had a lot of jazz legends teaching at the new school, which is the reason a lot of people wanted to go there. I used to just go to classes at the new school.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like just walk in. My friend would be like, I was my roommate at the time, Adam. He'd say, they're doing there's a master class with Joe Lovano today. You should come. And they never carded you, or, and they never checked ID at that point. And just amazing. I just walk in. I used to go to classes with Jerry Gonzalez at his apartment in the Bronx. Hand drumming class. Did a whole bunch of different people. Red Rodney, who's legendary, like bebop player. I'd go to these master classes.
But also, this is networking.
This is networking.
And I when a lot of people ask me like, oh, how do you get involved in whatever scene it is, any scene? It's like, well, you're doing that. You're connecting somehow.
You're just
go to shows. Go drop in on a guest lecture. You do that here too. I mean, it can happen here.
People and make friends and find people with similar interests. I did have a little bit of that sort of set up for me when I got here. When I got to New York,
but you had already made those contacts at other places, so I don't. Right, you networked up there,
right?
It travels,
which
with
is
you.
how it works.
Right.
Yeah, right. So, and then some of the people that were playing like in the house bands, I had met at the new school through these other friends, and I would do jam sessions with them at the new school or at other places, like ones that we set up on our own.
Oh, okay.
Either in a rehearsal room. Sometimes we used to play in people's apartments.
Yeah.
One guy lived on McDougal Street, and we were always playing in his apartment. 2 a.m. in the morning, we'd be playing in his apartment, which is, when I think about it now, it's like, if it were me next door, I'd be like, going, shut the hell up. But, so, and that was like I said, the first maybe year or so, I was kind of surfing the jam sessions a little bit. And I would see, it was kind of funny. So another key moment for me was I would see these guys who were really advanced and were already working with, Betty Carter, like, they had like a gig with a jazz legend.
Yeah.
And they were more or less my age or around there. And, some of them were like really attitudinal and,
Sure.
I just think these guys have huge egos, and they were always the ones getting up and playing. And I was like, man, these guys have massive egos. And then when I really started thinking about it, I had to turn it around on myself and be like, no. Actually, it's my own ego that's keeping me from getting up there. Because I don't want to look bad. Of course, it's natural.
Yeah, of course.
And that's when I started going to Smalls. I'd heard about this place, Small. People were talking about musicians. Hey, you hear about Smalls, man? Jam sessions killing down there. Blah, blah, blah. Roy Hargrove was there. And, Roy was there a lot. Roy was a hardcore hanger. I think, throughout his entire life. He really embodied what jazz is about. So I started going and, so at those jam sessions, it wasn't like, oh, hey, come on in, we're having a jam session and we'll put your name on the list. There's none of that. If you, had the guts or whatever, driving yourself forward like I was, move, feet, it was like you'd go up and get it, there'd be a line of people on the side of the stage.
Okay.
And, usually, or it was just a group of people sitting there, but you knew they were involved. They were going to get up and play.
I mean, you have your instrument,
or
too,
someone,
right?
or someone were standing up and would be standing on the stage. And usually, it was pretty clear who the next person was because they were kind of next in line, and they were sort of make it obvious, like they, get their horn ready and stuff.
And again, just because this is my naive on jazz, is everybody's instrument can sub, or is it just certain instruments that can come and jam?
I mean, there are certain instruments that are more standard.
Yeah.
You
I feel like it's very common for sax. But like,
trumpet,
are there drummers showing up? Are there different? Yeah.
The thing about that is the rhythm section players, a lot of them, they don't want to go to the jam sessions because once they get up, they're going to be playing forever.
Right.
Like 30 minutes on the same song. While every sax player in the world that wants to come in, is playing.
Yeah.
And so it can be kind of a drag for them, but I'm sure it's also part of their it's part of them developing their chops to be able to play through that.
Right.
But, in other words, like I might get up and play for 2 minutes and then go sit down and they're still playing, so they're, but in a way it works to their advantage because they get a lot more experience playing. They're always playing.
Well, and maybe that, if you're a drummer, that's when you say like, no, I'm going to sit this one out and let the other guy take that set. And like, that's a different type of learning, I guess, too. Like having for a drummer to hang for, or a bass player to hang for the whole night up there, is a whole nother.
It's
I
a
guess.
discipline, I think, So, in the first, it was a few months really. I would go there a lot, and then I was just bleeding every time. You know what I mean? Like, I felt. I certainly was like, I'd be the last one up. No one wants to hear that after 5, 6, 10 horn players. No, it doesn't matter how good you are. No one wants to hear. Unless you're really
okay.
And the rhythm section's tired.
Yeah.
And then you felt like you were that person. I imagine it's what it's like for comics to get up and, like it's just crickets out there. You're getting no response and you feel like, my friend of mine described it as like that set of neon lights that rotates around your head going, you suck, you suck, you suck. The internal dialogue that can happen, right? What was funny, and I was starting to gig and stuff, so I was playing gigs. I remember coming from a gig and being so tired from hanging out, the night before.
Yeah, but just for clarity too, you're not getting paid for jam sessions.
No,
you're not making money on that. Like
you're there to
maybe the house band is.
Yeah,
the house band is probably.
Right. But if you're just going to hang out, no.
Right. Yeah.
No.
So it's actually like you're investing.
You're investing in
yourself.
It's really in your education.
Yeah.
And again, you're networking because you're going to meet people there.
Right.
And hopefully you're going to get some gigs out of it.
Right.
Which does happen.
Yeah.
But for me, a lot of it was more about just being around the environment of jazz and how, the oral tradition. And the thing that really, one of the reasons I wanted to move to New York in the first place was, I knew that you had to learn from people that are older than you, more experienced. And where was that happening? It wasn't happening in Ithaca very much. A little bit with some of those older mentors I had. But like I wanted to be around a whole scene.
Yeah.
And I found that at Smalls.
Yeah.
There were people that I met either at Smalls or at a couple other jam sessions where I was like, oh,
yeah,
I have you on a record.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what they looked like.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or maybe I'd seen a grainy photo, but this is years later, Oh my God, it's so-and-so, know? And there were young players. Like the first time I went to Smalls, I heard young players, a couple of whom I knew maybe personally, and a couple of whom I had heard of or knew from their recordings. But I was like, oh, wow. And it was really the first time I was like, oh, this sounds totally new to me. It doesn't sound like a record. It doesn't sound like something somebody heard before, and it's just, regurgitating. It was like, because the first night I went there was Roy Hargrove was playing. Roy was always burning, like one of the best. And Greg Tardy, another friend of mine, tenor, incredible sax player, and they were playing a Coltrane song, and it sounded like as good as Train. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, damn,
that's amazing. Yeah.
So after a while, I just got so tired from hanging out late.
Sure.
I stopped caring what I sounded like. That's when I really started to grow.
Right. Interesting.
Funny thing, right? Like, that's what getting out of your way when people say that. That's what they really mean. It's like you got to put your ego aside. I think to really do music well or art, you have to try and be humble. You have to humble yourself to the art form.
Yeah,
because it's bigger than you are.
So you're doing that. What happens after that? What happens after, like in the chronicle? This is like
this went on for a couple of years.
Yeah,
almost maybe a year and a half. I was there like 3-4 nights a week.
Yeah,
I mean, I got to the point, and I was the first few years I lived in New York, I was either couch surfing or I was in an apartment, but usually not even a year. And then the next situation. So I was making, I wasn't making any money. And at that point, by the end of my what I think of like my early Smalls years, I was actually living in an SRO. That is single room occupancy.
Yeah.
Basically a week-to-week hotel. They used to be a lot more common in New York City. And, a lot of it was people on the skids and, maybe people that were marginalized. Some of them had, mental health issues or drug problem or, other illicit activities going on. And I wasn't living in them that long, but there were a couple I lived in, and I just realized like I couldn't sleep more than 5 hours at a time anymore. Even if I tried to go to bed early, you know what I mean? I'd been hanging so hard for so long, maybe 4 hours, and I would just wake up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I had to make myself stop. At one point, at the beginning, I had to make myself go to the jam session. Then I had to make myself stop and sort of get a more regular life, because I was sort of like, in a way, I was probably nearing collapse, just driving myself too hard.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drinking, hardly at all. I wasn't doing a lot of things that, can tear you down.
Yeah.
But in terms of the music, I was really on a mission. And I just was like, okay, I gotta chill a little bit. And then around that time, I started doing legal proofreading.
Okay.
So that became my side gig, which was very convenient for the musician's lifestyle because usually you would get irregular shifts. It wasn't this time to this time every day. So if you got 3 or 4 shifts a week, usually you could kind of cover your expenses.
Okay.
Because the rate was pretty good. It was between $20, $25 at that point in the 90s.
Yeah.
Working for big law firms and just attempt, going and reading contracts and correcting them.
Wow.
Don't have to know anything about law.
Now we have Chat GPT.
I totally. I know. So I started doing that, and then I started with sort of this group of friends that that had been around. Started getting really interested in Latin music.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a musician in New York City, you can't not be exposed to it. And I had been hearing it, and like, because I was writing a lot more music.
And performing it out with your own groups.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Original music. I was hearing Latin music, and like it was really in my ear, you know, to the point where it started to come out. And I was always into bossa nova, things that are more standard in the jazz world. Love that music, you know, and the composers, and starting to learn more. And then I started playing in a Latin band around that time. Sort of dovetailed with, you know, stopping hanging out so much. And we got this regular gig, a weekly gig on the Upper West Side, and started playing. It was kind of like a learning opportunity for me to get deeper into music. And then we got hired as a band by this Cuban trombone player named Juan Pablo Torres, who was really like a huge figure in that scene. Incredible trombone player, incredible musician, composer. He came out of this scene that produced this legendary Latin jazz band called Irakire with Arturo Sandoval and Chucho Valdez. These guys are huge legends now.
Yeah.
They're still alive. Juan Pablo, unfortunately, is not. And Paquito de Rivera, like he grew up with those. He came up with those guys. And that was when the real schooling in Cuban music started, because I was like, oh.
So how are you learning? Is there like charts, or are you just having to
there were
just
charts.
learn stuff?
A friend, the drummer in the band, William Bausch, he was into transcribing stuff. And let's try this one. Let's try this one. And it was cumbia. It was all these different styles. It wasn't only Cuban music, but we tended to focus on Cuban music. And we were all also really started to really get deeply into Afro-Cuban folkloric music. And I would say Afro-Caribbean music in general. And by that I mean rumba and, you know, all these folkloric forms, bata drumming, and, you know, like really deeply into the percussive side, which is the foundation of that music. Yeah. And started playing with Juan Pablo, and like, you know, he'd cut me every single time we played, as he should have done. But I'm like, I'm a tenor saxophone player. I'm supposed to be able to play all this wild stuff. Right. 3 notes, he just sliced me in half, you know. And he would always play first. He would solo first. And it was just me and him on the front line, you know, the horns. Sure. He would always solo first, and he would just and he would leave the entire place. Every time he could always get house. And he did it by playing music, not just by sort of, you know, being spectacular, which is another thing, you know. Sure. And I'd be like, okay, you're gonna leave me some, you know, what am I supposed to do after that? Oh man. So that's when I really started getting like, okay, I got to study this. I got to really, you know, immerse myself, because this guy's embarrassing me. I'm embarrassing myself being up here trying to play bebop over this stuff, you know, which fits, but you got to know how to make it fit. And that kind of started my whole journey with Latin music, which has now been a huge part of my life the last 30 plus years. You know, so, yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, you teach a history of Latin music here. I mean, I want to do another podcast where you maybe just kind of do some of that too. But this is more on you. But that's incredible. So, but you're that's a job though. You're in that band. You're making money at that, or yeah. I mean, it was more of a passion project in a way. But we were serious about, you know, getting out there and playing and stuff. But I mean, we weren't making a ton of money. But I was also working. I was working in a Brazilian dance band. I was working at SOBs a lot, which is still there. Yeah. I think it's still there. As far as I know, it's still there. Sounds of Brazil, down on Varick Street. Okay. So I worked there with this band. It's called Axé music, and that's basically dance music from particularly part of the northeast of Brazil called Bahia. So it's very, most music in Brazil, and most music in the New World is very African influenced. But that music, it's like contemporary dance music, you know. Yeah. Axé is a term from Yoruba, which, you know, it has to do with like life energy and, you know. Not to skip forward too, but just for our students too, you've traveled in South America and studied down there and made records down there. Yeah, so in the late 90s, I started, the first time I went to Brazil, and as part of it was because, at a certain point in, I think, 1996, I stopped bouncing around all the different apartments and the hotels and whatever, and I got an apartment on 120th Street and 5th Avenue in Central Harlem, and stayed there for 13 years. Oh, wow. You know, that was my little man cave for a long time. And so one of my neighbors was my good friend Herminia, who's Brazilian, and she just knocked on my door one day, super friendly. Hey, I heard you playing. I'm a musician too. She's a singer.
Oh, that's amazing.
Handed me some, sheet music for bossa novas and sambas and stuff, and I was like, wow. And then she got me in this band, this Brazilian band, and then I really got interested, and I started like getting interested in the language. You can fall in love with a culture,
absolutely.
With a whole country. And she actually, she's like one of my best friends. She took me down to Brazil the first time I went with her. She said, you should come, blah, blah, blah. And started meeting people down there. Really started learning how to speak Portuguese. I had really made an effort, but, once you're immersed is when you realize what you don't know.
Sure.
So when people are like, do you speak Portuguese? And you're like, yeah, I thought I did.
Is that a similar thing to like, going to Smalls for the first couple of times, like going to a whole other country to try to find musicians to collaborate with or learn from?
Yeah, although
it feels like a much more stressful level, but
in a way,
not.
I was less concerned about meeting musicians than just about.
Just
I had traveled somewhat beforehand. It wasn't my first time out of the country, but this was like a whole other level of like, I want to really understand this culture. I want to.
It's not just it's everything. Food.
It was everything.
Sounds.
In a way, music was important, but like. It was more all of it. The music wasn't even the first priority in me going down there. It was like the language, the culture, and and sort of seeing like, okay, I hear in Brazilian music what this amazing spirit is that comes out of their culture.
Sure.
Let me go and meet it firsthand. And what's that? Blew my mind completely. And then I started going back there quite a bit.
Yeah.
And learned to speak Portuguese fluently. And sort of along the way, I kind of picked up Spanish. I mean, like I speak Spanish well enough to talk to people, but my Portuguese is better than my Spanish. But, it was kind of funny because I was so interested in Cuban music, but yet I was so interested in Brazil as a country.
Okay.
And I did go to Cuba in 2001 as well, and started traveling in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico and Cuba. And that was also mind-blowing. I mean, just the music, hearing the music that you've been listening to for a long time and then hearing it in person.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
And when are you making like your first recordings and all that?
Around 98, 90, okay. I recorded. In sort of in the mid 90s, I was also introduced to a bass player named Phil Bowler. And Phil Bowler is one of these, he's an incredible musician, bass player. He played with Wynton Marsalis. With Horace Silver, he played with Roy Haynes. I mean, he played with Jackie McLean for many years. The list goes on and on. Incredible, like feel, amazing chord, just swing like forever. And also, there's a joke about bass. There's always a joke about bass solos, but this guy, every time he played, people were like, they weren't talking to each other. They were listening very closely.
For the students that don't know, the joke is that's when you go get a drink.
That's when you talk to your friends, and
our friend Kevin's a bass player. Let's be honest.
Sorry. So anyway, I was working in Phil's band and getting schooled. He's another one of my mentors.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, because I was writing music, I was like, I want to record some of this. And so I hired Phil and William Bausch, who I mentioned a second ago, and Pete Smith on the guitar. These were all my friends, my peer group, and recorded this album. And then when I heard it, you suck. I still have that thing. The first time I hear playback, I'm like this.
Yeah.
The shoulder slump.
Yeah.
Fortunately, now it goes away pretty quickly, and I can actually deal with, okay, this sounds good.
Well,
this
the first
needs
recording
work,
is so different than...
I mean, the first take of any recording I do now.
Oh, okay.
Even today.
Oh, wow.
My reaction is still like,
Yeah, interesting.
But that's just, it's hard to hear yourself, I think.
I think everyone has a little bit of... I think there's...
It's part of the experience.
But this is like your record?
My record.
Had you recorded with other people beforehand?
I did one, I think, before.
One session.
Yeah, one record.
It's pretty green going in for your own record.
Yeah.
First, that's pretty.
And I was impelled to like, I liked, at that point, I was really getting into writing original music, and I was like, if I don't record it, no one's,
right.
It's got to be me to record it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was encouraged, by Phil and by my friends. But, and some of the music that we were playing, like I was actually writing music that were like the Latin group, Grupo Los Santos, we were playing a lot of my stuff. Phil was playing some of my stuff. Okay. So I was getting a good response, from the stuff that I was bringing in, the original stuff. So I recorded it, and then I sat on it for like maybe 7 or 8 months because I was like, oh, this doesn't sound good enough. I don't know if I feel confident enough to put it out, you know. And then I went to Brazil, and I remember I must have had it on a used cassette, maybe even at that point in the late 90s. Yeah. And playing it for some friends that I met there, and I was like, actually, I got to get this out. Like, this actually sounds, you know, when you get a little distance, it's like, this is good. This is good. I got to put this out, you know. Yeah. And then I came back and worked the legal proofreading. I took every shift. I started working 4 or 5 days a week to just, you know,
because people need to. This costs money to record. It costs money and time
to record and to put it out. And then I put it out, and that was, I think that was my second recording actually. And then the group of us, the Latin group, we did an album too. They all started, you know, they start to put out more things.
Because just playing live versus studio, those are very different things. And I mean, wildly different things.
Two different skill sets. Yeah, absolutely. And then around that 99 or 2000, I played at Town Hall in New York City, which was a peak for me at that point with Juan Pablo Torres, this Cuban trombone player. And there were legends on that stage. Not us, but we opened the show, this band group of Los Santos, which was, we were all backstage like, you know, because it was a Latin audience, and it's like, what are we doing here? And, you know, we're like this gringo Latin band. And, you know, it just felt kind of like.
The whole band was?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
We were all guys that were not Latino, didn't grow up in the culture, and were just really into the music, you know. But we played this concert, and like Andy Gonzalez, you know, was legend of Latin bass player, you know, of bass playing, was there. He was on the gig. Horacio El Negro Hernandez, another legendary Cuban drummer. Pedrito Martinez was singing in the coro, singing in backup. Like he's now, this guy is like he's world famous now. So it was really cool for us to be there and be like, and just be around those people.
Yeah.
How do they do it? You know,
sure.
And what do they sound like? And, but it was also for us, you know, it was a notch. It was like, oh my God, wow, awesome. We played at Town Hall. Holy crap, you know.
Was it well received? Was it a good show?
It was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that must feel even better.
Because, like I was saying, you know, JP Juan Pablo was amazing at bringing the music, but also connecting with an audience. And his whole thing, he passed in 2005, but he always used to say, I carry my roots under my arm. You know, he came out of a tradition of dance music, so he loved what people think of as salsa. You know, but Cuban music, you know, there's mambo, there's cha-cha, there's all the different genres of Cuban music that are popular dance forms. And he believed that, you know, that was really the root. Even though he was an amazing jazz player and soloist, he really wanted to keep it rooted. And that was one of his strengths.
Yeah.
And so he really connected. I mean, I remember hearing him at the concert playing this solo, just an a cappella, like a solo thing in front of a song. And I was like, I couldn't play half of that stuff on the saxophone that he was doing, because his music fundamentals were so strong that he could play very rhythmically, and he'd play these, you know, he would just be inverting triads or doing something like that. And it was like mind blowing what he did, you know. Yeah. People going nuts. I remember hearing, because Alfredo Valdez was on that concert, but also Paquito Echevarria was playing, and the entire audience started clapping clave.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and he was just playing solo.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were all backstage like soaking it up, you know, like, oh my God, this guy's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So you're making recordings, you're playing in bands. Am I missing other things at this moment? You're not teaching yet.
No, I wasn't.
You're not teaching yet.
I've done like a little bit of, you know, either like arts and education programs where you go in and, you know, with a band and play, or, you know, I had a couple of private students here and there.
Okay.
But I wasn't really pursuing it. I was trying to, you know, I was chasing that sort of myth of like, you know, you either play or you teach.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's a myth or not, but I think it's a myth now at this point in time, because you can't be a musician anymore and not do anything else. Yeah. You know, you have to have something. I mean, I think that was probably always true.
I feel like I got a lot of crap for being involved in education in my like 20s, and now in my like 30s, late 30s, everyone's like, "Is there a gig?" You know, it's like everyone's like, it's like, "Oh, I wish I had that." It's just like, oh,
and now it looks like
you were making fun of me for the first 10 years, and now you want to hang.
Like a really smart move now.
Yeah,
you know, like
but I think, like you said, because as much as I've kind of been involved with education for a long time, but I was always doing sessions every night. And so like you go into these, doing the street work, I feel confident as an engineer. I don't feel just like as a school person that just has this stuff.
You need all of it.
Like I feel like doing those things and not just teaching. And you're going and spending the time. And Kevin, I know you've done so much of the same of that too. But like you do need to make money and a living.
Yeah,
so
right. So I was still doing the legal proofreading.
Okay, so you're still doing that.
And it's making some money at music for sure.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, like at that point. And I think, when I started doing the legal proofreading, it was like, oh, thank God I don't need to take every gig that comes down the pike anymore.
Every music gig?
Yeah, every music gig.
Okay.
Right.
So you can be more selective.
Yeah, you could, it's like, okay, I can just go, because I don't care about the legal proofreading. I'm not invested. I just go, I try and do the best I can, I do a good job, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And I go home. I don't take it home, Mm-hmm. But music is with you 24/7, so it was kind of like a breather in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
just the honest truth, you have to make some money. You have to pay your bills, right? You got to make some money somehow, right?
Yeah, you got to make money somehow. I didn't have a family. I wasn't married. I was still living on my own.
Sure.
So my expenses were that of a bachelor, and as the years went on, I mean, my apartment was not rent controlled; it was rent stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
But after a few years, it was like, oh, this is pretty sweet. By the time I left there, I was I don't even remember. It wasn't even $800. I don't think a month. That was I left in 2008, I think. So when I left that apartment and moved, but so like. Certain things were moving in my favor, in terms of that. Like, and it was also choices I had made, like to not get married or have kids yet, or, I didn't care about owning a house or any of that stuff. Care about any of that, And I was traveling, starting to travel.
Yeah. Are you touring at this point? Are you doing?
Yeah, here, most of it was with like indie groups.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing big tours with big artists. So we're more like van tours and stuff like that. But that's some of my favorite memories. I love that stuff because
that's a whole different type of school.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
that's
totally, totally learning how to travel and still be a good human being and not be a jerk. When you're 4 hours of sleep and doing stuff you shouldn't have been doing and what but just showing up. Learning how to interact with the sound crew and be cool and be professional. And just like I said, just be a good human being. And then,
did you ever figure out how to be a good?
I'm still working on it. I'm working on it. Yeah, I'm a work in progress.
Amazing. So where does that take us? I guess.
Well, in 2001 was a big year for various reasons, right? 9/11 happened, and I was living in New York when that happened. But the other thing that happened about a month before that was my father died, and it was very sudden. He had a stroke. He was actually driving when he had the stroke, but. And he was a huge figure in my life, he was very important to me. And so it was like, and then I came back. So after the funeral and everything, and I came back to New York and like maybe a few weeks later, 9/11, and I was like,
that's so heavy.
And so what that ended up doing for me the next a year or so later, I started thinking, well, maybe I'll go back to school, which I never, it's funny. It's really funny to me that I'm now a professor, like, because I was never very academic in a lot of ways. Like, I thought, I kind of just, it's like, yeah, sure, you can. I mean, I always loved reading. It wasn't like I didn't like books, but like I felt like the real learning came when the rubber hits the road.
Totally.
You do it. And that's how you learn. Totally. If you don't know how to do 100%. It, you just figure it out some way. Part of that was, I think, where and when I grew up in the country, just like. You know how to do it? Well, go figure it out, or watch your older brother, or your dad, or your mom, or like there was a context where you just figure it out, and that was just, in a way, a simpler age. It wasn't all computer driven. I can't figure all that stuff out, like today, like I couldn't fix a computer, but but I thought, well, maybe I'll get into teaching, and for that, I really need a master's degree. But, some of that was swimming around in my head, but a lot of it was just, I wanted to learn more about writing for larger groups because I was hearing all this stuff, and some of it I could write down, and some of it was like still a challenge to articulate,
to
the language of writing stuff down, and not just writing it down, creating it, right? But for like large ensembles, big bands, orchestras, whatever, I was hearing this stuff in my head. And so I lived pretty close to City College, it was in Harlem. And I thought, it was literally August. And I was like,
That's
let
funny.
me just go over and talk to someone about, I want to take a course on orchestration.
Huh.
And Ron Carter, legendary, the most recorded bass player in jazz history, was teaching there.
Mm-hmm.
Or so I thought. He had been. He had just retired, but I didn't know that part. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll, whatever, I'll see what happens,
Yeah.
I go up there and I talk to some people. Hey, can you come back tomorrow and, audition? And I was thinking, audition for what? Like because I wanted to study composition.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they sort of had a plan to try and push me into the performance program.
Interesting.
And I wasn't even thinking like of getting. I mean, I was thinking about getting a degree, but I wasn't really committed. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to start the program.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I just walked in there, I really didn't plan ahead. So anyway, I come back the next day and I meet this guy named Mike Holliber, who's a piano player there and a great composer and arranger, and became one of my mentors there. And I auditioned with him, and got in, and they were like, oh, you might want to, do the performance program. And it's kind of funny when I think about it now, again, like in hindsight, I had a kind of an attitude about it. I mean, I'd been working in New York as a musician for 11 years by that point.
Yeah.
And my attitude was, you can't show me shit.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
What are you going to show me about, and which when I think about it now, it seems very naive of me to think that. But I was way more experienced than most of the students there.
Yeah.
Because some of them, they had really good students in the undergrad program.
Mm-hmm.
The undergrads, honestly, were generally better than the grads. Because a lot of the grad students, and I hate to say this, I don't mean to diss anyone, it's just that many of the grad students had come right out of finishing their undergrad degree and gone right into a grad program, which again, in hindsight, looks pretty smart, but they weren't as experienced in terms of the performance.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a lot of international students there, very good, like really good players there. So it was a great environment.
But it's safe to say you probably wouldn't have been mentally ready even to do that, to grad program. You're saying like
no,
11 years earlier anyways, right?
No,
so
totally wasn't. I totally was not,
right.
obviously, no.
But I can see how playing in the city for that long and doing it
it gives you
put
like
a little
this,
chip on your shoulder with that.
Yeah.
I mean, totally.
And so Ron Carter had just retired, but they had just hired John Patitucci. So I was like, oh, sweet,
Cool.
another legendary bass player. And I ended up playing in all his ensembles, and he was another like very important influence just to be around someone on that level.
Sure.
And I also studied with a classical composer named David Del Tredici. He just passed, I think it was last fall. Amazing. Like he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He had been a concert pianist in his younger days, and he'd sort of been somewhat mentored by Aaron Copland. But he was incredible mind, ears, like he could look at a score, he would hear everything. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Amazing,
Like a big classical score with that many staves and all those instruments. Or he would look at something and go, oh, you know what, you could do this. And he would sit down and then my mind would be exploding like, oh my God. So that was a really good time for me because, well, number one, I knew why I was going to school. Mm-hmm. I was paying for it myself. It was unbelievably cheap compared to what even today, but even for then, I mean, I think I remember when it went up to $1,600 a semester. Mm-hmm. And that was because I was a city resident. It was a city, CUNY school. And I studied a lot. Like I wanted to study what I didn't know. That was the other reason I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I was like, I don't want to be in a performance program. I kind of been doing that. I want to study things I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I studied classical music. I studied with the two writing teachers, composition teachers I had there, I studied, jazz arranging, classical, just writing music, period. It was great.
Do you have some classical pieces you're not sharing with us?
I do have some.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There's
Have you ever released anything like that?
I've recorded, I've written stuff for some strings that was, recording session. Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. Yeah. I actually, and after I finished my degree in 2005, I was really like, I want to kind of get into the chamber music scene and, new music and stuff. But as sometimes happens, that was a little more of I had to learn how to really feel comfortable writing for strings and, because with horns, it was almost second nature by then or starting to be. And writing for jazz or for even in funk and more popular forms, and it just sort of, the work just sort of went that way, you know? So it's not that it didn't happen at all, but maybe not as much as I was thinking. I remember David Del Tredici asking me, I think when he signed my, my master's form or whatever, he goes, "You going to take your skills to Hollywood?"
Yeah.
Because he, he was very encouraging, and he's like, I think you could do well there, But I never really thought about moving to LA. I wanted to stay in New York, so, but anyway, and I have, actually, I still do occasionally write stuff for, like, there's this thing called Composers Concordance, which is a group run by an amazing composer named Gene Pritzker. And Gene is a guy who, like, he's so prolific, I can't believe it. Like, he can write orchestral stuff. Like, he worked on the last Matrix movie. He wrote some stuff for Cloud Atlas.
Oh, wow.
He's done some he's done some like Netflix stuff and stuff. But his main thing is what's called new music, writing original music. And so sometimes I'm involved with that group.
That's right. I remember you've done some of those. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you get your master's. You get that. And
then I started teaching at City College right away. Like I was a student teacher, and then they hired me pretty quickly to teach.
Okay.
It was a music appreciation or elements of music class. And then I started teaching at College of Staten Island right away because someone recommended me.
Sure.
Again, the networking thing. And started teaching jazz history there. And I was commuting from Harlem to Staten Island, public transportation, which is a 2-hour each way.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then, I also started teaching at John Jay.
Okay.
Which is another CUNY school. Yeah, they're all CUNY. And I was teaching American popular music. And what happened was, after a couple of years of that, maybe 2 or 3 years of doing this, excuse me, it was tough because, adjuncting doesn't pay a lot. And I was like, man, the money I'm making, I could do one wedding gig and make more than I'm going to make in a week.
Yeah.
And so I kind of started pursuing that again more.
Okay.
And that's something I'd always done some. That was never my main thing, but I'd done a lot of it. And then, and so I started doing that, and then I just stopped teaching for a while, almost 10 years, until I got hired here.
Oh, yeah.
And that came out of playing a gig with Paul Steinman.
Network.
Played one gig.
Yeah.
With the guy who started the department here.
Yeah, Paul Steinman started
the previous department head. I played one job with him on this gig that I was recommended by someone else for. And he texted me or called me.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, I remember what happened because your previous Dennis Bell, amazing teacher, but he was retiring. But it was, I guess, I don't know. He just maybe the decision was just made. It was kind of late. Whatever. Yeah. That's fine. It's totally right. That's fine. But I think there was like a few days.
Yeah,
it was like maybe 2 days.
Yeah, no, it was 2 or 3 days, like the weekend before Labor Day.
Yeah.
So not even a week before I think classes started. And he was like,
you both have interesting stories of how you got here.
He texted me. He's like, Paul, do you have a master's degree? And I was like, yeah. And my daughter was less than a year old. By this point, I'd gotten married.
Oh, wow, right, okay.
And I was like, I was having a really rough year in terms of income, like the worst year I'd had in a long time. And I was like, I got to find something else. I got a kid. I can't. This is serious. I can't. You change your life, right? So, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, I got this. And then I talked to him on the phone. And I was like, you got 3 courses? Shoot.
That's right, because he did 3 courses.
Like, yes, sign me up.
Right.
Sign me up.
And this was like 2012, I think.
It was like 2014 or 15, maybe. 14 or
right,
15.
You know what? That makes sense, because we got here in 2012, but that makes
15
sense.
or 16, I think, anyway, I started. But it wasn't long after my daughter was born. And so then I started teaching here.
Yeah. Amazing. And you've taught a bunch of different things here. So you've taught, what have you taught here?
Theory, pretty much the whole theory sequence. Right. And then jazz history, which I still teach. Right. And history of Latin music, which has been like a couple of years now.
Yeah. And those are really exciting. They're fairly new courses here, but those are really fun.
Exciting. I really like them.
But between that whole time, you're still recording with people. You're still making your own albums.
So from, when did I start? It was right after my dad died too, is when I started my octet. So I had this jazz octet, but it was very Latin influence, like Latin jazz, kind of straight ahead and Latin. It was just a mix of stuff. And it grew and grew. It ended at 11 people, which is totally impractical. You can't get any gigs with that. But I was just, it was my personal vehicle, for expression. So I put probably 10 years,
really,
just like hustling and trying to get gigs. And I got a couple of grants here and there, which were great. I did some traveling. We did like 2 or 3 real tours with that many people.
That's a lot of people.
I think one of them I actually made money on. You got to put some money into it to make it run. But and then I was working with a whole bunch of other guys. I've been a freelance most of my career.
Right.
Not really doing like a big gig with someone, like I said, like a pop act or something, which is one way to do it. But doing a lot of gigs with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, along the way, my line that I use in class now is like, I've played with legends, I've played with unknowns, and everyone in between, every level in between. Yeah. And been fortunate, really fortunate, and like some of the people that I was lucky enough to play with, I talk about Tony Allen, the Afrobeat creator with Fela. But oftentimes called one of the greatest drummers that ever lived. I love that phrase, and I also hate it because there's so many that are the greatest to me. It's a long list of people.
Yeah.
But that was a really amazing experience for me. That was in 2011. So kind of different, and also doing my own stuff. Traveling all over the place, Europe, South America, United States, all over, doing all kinds of music. I played like an Irish show once.
Oh, yeah, really?
Bus tour, 30-day bus tour. Yeah.
There you go. And then when did technology, because now I know you use the DAW computers and all that.
I pretend to use the DAW.
When did that become,
you're speaking of technology?
When did that become part of your knowledge set or tool set?
I was like a Mennonite for a Luddite for so long. I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until after 9/11.
Really?
And that was by choice. I had a beeper because in the days when I was doing legal proofreading, you had to have one.
Okay.
That's how you had to respond right away if they had a shift for you. Whether it was yes or no, they wanted to hear from you.
Oh, wow.
Because you would give your availability, like I'm available these times. And usually you weren't going to say no, because then they'd be like, you can't really do that.
Right.
If you said you're free, we want to send you on the shift.
Right.
So I had the beeper. And at that time, I don't think I had a cell phone. And I also didn't have a TV by choice. I didn't have a TV most of the 90s because I just didn't, it was a time waster to me.
Yeah, wow.
And I wanted to spend that time on music.
Yeah.
And that was a good decision in hindsight. On the other hand, when 9/11 happened, I was like, I found out about it on the internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I lived so far uptown.
Right.
And I woke up a little late that day and I was like, what in the world is... I went to my next door neighbors, like, can I see what's happening on your TV?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I got to have a TV.
Yeah.
I think I had a VCR player. But maybe it didn't have it. Maybe the TV didn't work or something. You know what I mean? Just to watch movies and stuff. But then, at a certain point, I mean, like I've talked to you about this, I was always, there's the idea of there's two sides of the glass and you can't be on both sides, right? At the same time, right? It's hard to produce yourself or record yourself.
Yeah.
Some people have done it, and some do it. I was more about trying to figure out how do I, communicate with the engineer what I want and stuff. I was less about knowing about mics and stuff. And that came really, honestly, probably after 2000, I mean, it came, or maybe by the time I was at City College, I was kind of,
starting
because I remember Lenny Pickett, the legendary sax player with the Tower of Power and who has been running the SNL band forever now, for a long time, incredible musician. He came and did a masterclass at City College, and he did it. It was sponsored by the Recording Arts Program, which they had there. And I remember it was really funny because he was a great guest artist. Like, he was amazing. He was telling stories about the old days and the new days, and how SNL and all that, and how they work on a weekly basis with SNL, how they put the show together and stuff. But he said, look, when he got to New York, there used to be what's called jingle work, right?
Sure.
So musicians would get hired to go and play on a commercial. And it was an hour recording session or whatever, and you'd get money, and sometimes you get residuals, and that was that was the day gig. By the time I got to New York, some of that was still around, but it was starting to fade.
Yeah.
Probably, in the 90s there was still that work. But I was never aiming at Broadway, and I was never trying to be a studio musician until probably the mid to late 90s. I was like, oh, I should really work on this. This could be a thing, you know. So, but Lenny Pickett was like, look, learn some computer software. He said, I wish there were more students in the performance department here, because they really need to hear this. He goes, you don't want to be one of those guys standing down in front of the musicians union with a confused look on your face. Where did the work go? Because he said, look, Broadway and all that, and this would have been like 2004. He said, all that's going away. Now, in the case of Broadway, all that has not gone away. The union did successfully, keep a lot of that. But it
Sure.
has changed, obviously, and there's less of it than there. And the jingle work is non-existent anymore. That's all done in the box now, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, that kind of, I was listening to him, and part of that was probably because I wasn't 23 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was 33, I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I need to start dealing with this, So I did start, and I had been, even from a few years before that, I used Finale, which is music notation software, and very powerful, and I still use it. So that I had been learning.
That's a really good gateway into it's MIDI and all that.
But honestly, it wasn't to be totally honest. Like, it was when I started teaching here that I was like, oh, okay, it's an opportunity.
Sure.
And it's also a motivation. Yeah. To learn much more.
But also here, we're not really performance. We're more of the.
But that's what I mean.
Right.
Like, I had kind of wanted for a few years, even before I got hired here. I was like, man, I should just intern at a studio.
Yeah.
Just like, have an alter ego and be studio guy. And I kind of like, that was like on my bucket list. Mm-hmm. So when this teaching job came up, I was like, oh, this is kind of perfect. Mm-hmm. To learn. Yeah. And I have learned a ton since I've been here.
I learn something every day being here.
I now know how to click record.
You can do it. And we've made a lot of records. We've made a lot of records together here, and you're always bringing amazing stuff in here with whether it's Tony or Scott or whoever. So who are you playing with these days? Like, what are your projects you're messing with these days?
I'm playing in roughly 10 bands these days. They're not all. Count these. They're not all. Obviously, they're not all every week or not even every month. Scott Kettner, you mentioned, Nation Beat is one of the main projects.
Great project.
That we recorded here. Yeah. I play in 3 big bands. One is called Shapiro 17, led by John Shapiro. It's more of a jazz orchestra. And we just recorded, actually, we did this week,
that's right.
week at the Power Station, just in June now. So that's our 3rd album, or the 3rd. Yeah, I think it's the 3rd that he's done, and the 3rd one I've done. Yeah. Great band, great writing, amazing stuff. I play in a group called Bronx Connexion, which is kind of based at Lehman because Victor Rendon, the band leader, teaches there. Also a really interesting project, really fun group, Latin jazz big band. And then I play in another group led by Alex Ayala, the bass player in my trio. He also recorded here, Apollo is his nickname. It's called Alex Ayala's Afro-Puerto Rican Big Band. And it's all based on Puerto Rican folk music, bomba and plena. And then I just did various other groups, the McCarran Brothers, that we also recorded here. Just did a gig with them last Sunday. I have 3 of my own bands. My own quintet, I'm going to play at Smalls next week. Right. And then the Paul Carlon Trio, which we recorded here. And that album that we recorded, the latest one, is supposed to be coming out on Sakai Curtis's Truth Revolution Records. Yeah. I think it'll probably be next year when it comes out. It all got pushed back by various life events. But
it's a great record. I can't wait for that to come out.
Thank you. Yeah. And a few other groups that, again, they might not work all the time, but they keep coming back to.
And you're always freelance, working with lots of people. Yeah, that's a lot to juggle. I played in 2 bands, and I'm like, that's too much.
I know it is. But if they were all working all the time, I'd just be totally insane. Because I have a family now, and that's a big part of my life. Major part of my life. But beginning of this summer, a few weeks ago, I went up to Syracuse. They have something called Summer Jazz, which is a jazz camp, summer camp. Really cool. I taught there like full time. Like I would do the whole summer session, like going back, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. And so the director, Larry Luttinger, he called me and said, hey, do you want to be the guest artist this year? So that was really cool. Yeah. I actually wish I'd been there more time because the kids were amazing. Yeah. Like, I was like, wow, these kids are so into it, And the coaches were great too. Some of them I knew, and, some of them I just met. So I still do that kind of stuff too, music education stuff, and still touring occasionally. Not as much as I used to. I don't want to be on the road that much anymore. Right. I love being on the road. Still love it. But I want to be part of my daughter's life. It's different priorities. And I don't have as much stamina for that as I used to, But like last summer, as I was touring a lot with Nation Beat. More than I've been in a long time. Mostly in the Northeast. But we also played Ottawa Jazz Festival. We went to Brazil.
Yeah.
And got a grant from Mercy to help.
That's right. Amazing.
With that. So, still got my hand in various
And what's next?
cookie jars.
What are you working on? What's
the
future?
The Trio album is the future. I definitely want to record. It's sort of that my trio and my quintet are my main personal things now. They scratch the itches that need scratching, and like I still love playing hard bop and straight ahead jazz. And so the quintet is, and the other thing about that is, like John Patitucci always said, try and play with people that are better than you. Or be around. It doesn't have to be play. It could be working with, right? Because then you're always reaching, always being challenged. That's what I love about New York. That's probably the reason I stayed here, is because I can go today I could go play a gig, in a brunch gig and get $75 or $100 and be playing with people I never met before who are going to kick my ass.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, whoa, how have I not ever met you before?
Right.
And like, let me check out what you're doing. Like, I got to go and work on that when I get home.
Yeah.
But with my quintet, to me, it's Harvey S., who was one of my mentors, bass player too. I used to play in his group.
Yeah, he's great.
He was actually at my audition that I did for Manhattan School of Music.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, it was really funny. He was one of the judges. Harvey S. on bass.
Eddie, was that the Paul? Is that who introduced you to Paul? Steinman? Because I know Steinman knew Harvey.
Right. I think they know each other. That's right.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't. It was someone in a swing band named Dave Post. Swing band called Swingadelic that I worked with for many years. Dave used to be a partner in Maxwell's in Hoboken.
Okay. That's probably what, because Paul used to live down in Hoboken.
Oh, yeah. So they knew each other. So Harvey, Eddie Allen on trumpet, who's like phenomenal, like someone I look up to. Elio Alves is a Brazilian piano player who's also he plays with if you see the big names in Bossa Nova coming to town, he's always playing with them. He plays with all those heavy musicians. And my buddy Willie Martinez on drums. Willie just won a Grammy from playing on Sakai Curtis's album from just this last year that won a Grammy. Yeah, so he's freshly minted Grammy winner, but he's also a New York veteran. He's one of those. The thing I love about New York musicians, they can play any style and they play them really well. He'll play the shit out of straight ahead jazz, and he'll turn around. He's Latino and he has that background in the music. Play that. He'll sing. He can sing you a ballad. He's got a beautiful singing voice. So it's a fun group.
Yeah. Well, that feels pretty thorough. Anything we're missing, Kevin? Anything question? I feel like I've just talked over you. I'm sorry to.
No, I've just been listening. It's been great to hear about your career.
I mean, I guess we do have some students. Most of our students are production technology, but we do have some sax players that they're always gravitating to you because you're the guy that I don't do that. What are they supposed to, if they're hungry, 20-year-old sax player, how different does that look for them? What do you tell them to do now in 2025 as opposed to, when you're coming up? Should they do the same thing? Should they try to go to these jams and just?
Yeah, they should.
Yeah.
I think it's, it's changed, right? And some of it I could probably learn from them. They already know. They already know to put their stuff on YouTube. They already know, that's how you get. That's how you get noticed these days. That's how you network in a sense. That's how you get your name out there. I think there are some of the traditional things that I was doing are still worthwhile to do. Of course, playing live is about playing live.
Yeah.
There's only one way to learn it, and that's by playing live.
Yeah.
And you need that process. I think it's more challenging today because everything you do is going to show up somewhere on social media, unfortunately, because back in the day that wasn't true. You could fall down on stage. Sure, maybe the people were there didn't have the best night or whatever.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to last forever.
Yeah.
And so I think that does make younger people more self-conscious, as it would anyone. I was fortunate to grow up in a time when that wasn't true.
Right.
It was just that life situation. But still, I mean, you still got to go out there and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also learning other people's solos, learning other music, whatever it is, whether it's a solo or a song by heart. And then I'm going to go back to what Charlie Parker said to Miles Davis: "Get thee to the piano, play piano." Or guitar. I think guitar too. I mean, anything that's chordal and that you
I'm
have
a guitar player, but I think you're right about piano.
I think
it's such a gateway to everything.
Yeah, it's the teacher. It's all right there in front of you. It's like graph paper. It's all laid out in front of you.
Even engineering. I pull up a piano when we're talking about notes on a frequency for an EQ. Everything is related to the notes.
Yeah,
like
and
everything we do behind all this stuff is to make the notes sound right and good and beautiful, right?
yeah,
Not cool compressor and like that stuff's cool, but like has to serve the music. You know,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Has
I
to
honestly think that the piano is possibly the greatest technological achievement of Western civilization.
At least
The
the
acoustic
harpsichord.
piano.
Yeah.
Because of everything you can do with it and because everything came out of it. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously there's
And
some pretty cool stuff today,
Yeah.
you know, that go way beyond the piano.
Sure,
But I just mean like it's an amazing instrument.
Yeah.
And because it has 12 keys, I mean, key signatures, right? And you can do anything on it. You can play rhythm, you can play harmony, you can play melody.
Mm-hmm.
All these things you can do on the piano.
Yeah.
You can't do all those. You can do all those things on the saxophone, but not all at the same time.
Right. Well, thank you, Paul, for hanging out today.
Thank you.
This was amazing. I've
was
known
really
you a
fun.
long time. I love you having you as a friend, as a
Likewise.
mentor, as a collaborator.
Pretty sure that's the first time you've ever said
I
it to
know.
me.
I'm going to be nice. We're usually very sarcastic,
Yeah, we are.
but and it's it's so fun to just being around each other and having different. You know, we all have different backgrounds, different musical
Yeah.
backgrounds, but the love of music and the love of even educating and being a part of this. We all learn stuff from the students. They show us
Absolutely.
something.
I've learned a ton just being at this school in this environment from you, from Kevin, from the students that I teach.
But that's the beauty of being here, and it feels kind of new, but also old school because it feels like when we tell our students be here, live here, right? And the ones that do, they start to hang and get it, whatever it is.
Yeah, they get it. Yeah,
that you can't get from just social media and just from like you go into the shows.
You got to be there.
You go into the jam sessions. That just reminds me of going to the punk rock shows. It's really essentially the same thing.
Totally.
Maybe not jamming in the same way, but the networking.
But it is. I mean, it comes from the same motivation, the same spirit. Absolutely.
Some of the coolest things I've ever gotten is because like, I met this person at a gig. Like,
right.
It's just you can have all the friends in the world on Instagram or whatever, but the in-person stuff goes to me a lot further. You know.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
But thank you for all you do for Mercy, and thank you both for being here today. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for running the board.